Is that Command F, Control F?
It should be Control F, yeah. Welcome to the Thoughtcast, ladies and gentlemen. We're professionals. We use our computers to the highest efficiency.
Super good at this. Okay, so.
That's our cold open right there. Jared.
Yeah.
Someone's missing.
Dude. Who is it?
Where has Joseph gone?
Oh my God, Joseph. Where is Joseph?
This might have been a murder.
A murder? A murder where?
At Karlov Manor.
At Karlov Manor?
Whoa! Hello, everybody. Welcome to the MTG Thoughtcast. Hi.
What's up, everybody?
Hello.
We've got John and myself here today. Joseph is out scouring the land for baby formula.
He's investigating where to find the baby formula.
Exactly.
Whoa.
It's at Karlov Manor, actually.
Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe.
So if we haven't guessed, we're talking murders at Karlov Manor today. So it's just Jared and I tonight, though. So we will investigate where Joseph has gone off to.
Yeah.
We're gonna crack this case.
Oh my God, dude, you're on a roll right now.
It's nonstop. We're just gonna be nonstop all night. But
amazing.
We appreciate y'all being here. Thank you. We enjoy all your companies. You know all the things in songs and dance, the things that Joseph likes to talk about that I don't because I'm bad at this.
Yeah, make sure you like and subscribe on the video. Turn on your notifications if you really love our content. That would be really cool for us.
Yeah.
And join our Discord. That'll be in the link in the description of the video. Super fun. It's so active that I sometimes miss things like a card that we're going to mention later in the video.
like an entire week of spoiler season?
Yeah, it's popping off in there, so hit that up and have a good time.
We have a lot of fun. We get a lot of game nights together. We're always discussing cards and brews, and we've had a bunch of new friends join recently. So hello, it's nice to see you all. Welcome to the Murder Club.
Yes, we recently collected the third triplet. Actually, my brother.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, hi. Shout out to Heath. This is Heath's episode today.
Shout out Heath. What's up, dude?
All right.
Alrighty,
Jared. Yeah. If I recall from a little while back when this set was originally pitched as coming for this year, this is something you said was going to be one of the biggest hype sets of this year for you. So what do you think?
I think it's really cool. I think some of the mechanics are really neat. I will say with a caveat, me personally, just as like with new set mechanics, and I guess we'll dive into set mechanics after this, but I don't love when mechanics are super similar to other mechanics. I feel like that kind of makes things a little bit confusing with how, like, if you're going to reskin a certain mechanic with just one little added bump to it, I'd like to see a little more creativity there.
Yeah, because that makes long-term players like me who's like, oh, you've got Scry and you have Surveil and you have just card top manipulation. You know, it's like we get keywords mixed up. It's like you think one mechanic does one thing and it's described to you and how it works is like, well, that reads just like and then it does
like so, when John and I were talking before we started recording today, and we were like, this is just this with War 2.
Exactly.
So I guess without further ado, we can get into the set mechanics. But
absolutely.
Yeah, overall, I am pretty excited for this set because it is taking us back to the plane of Ravnica, which is sick. It's a really cool plane. I think one of the strongest storylines in like the Magic zeitgeist. So I'm stoked to be here.
At time of recording as well, basically, almost all of the main set has pretty much just been shown off, and the entirety of that story, as a matter of fact, the story of the murders itself has actually unfolded as well. It was a really interesting take on the thing. I guess I'm not going to do any spoilers here in case anybody wants to actually go and read that, or they'll check out the cards themselves. The cards in the set do basically spoil the entire story as well, but the villains are not who you think they are. And it was the actual plot device that they did does something I'm not a fan of, but it was like, ooh, your obvious suspects you think are going to be the ones, but the hidden puppet master, that kind of thing. Is really, really cool. So,
yes.
And I've said before, I'm not a huge fan of Ravnica just in general, but this outing definitely makes this sort of like what they did with Ixalan. It's like they put enough different stuff in here to make it like, we're on Ravnica. There are Ravnica names and themes and characters and things like that, but it almost feels like a super weird blend of almost a completely different investigation world that they crafted to be like, hey, let's just put this on Ravnica instead. And I think they did a very good job with it. This is actually a Ravnica set I am excited for.
It's cool because it's like, I feel like every time we're on Ravnica, it's like a world-ending event. And it's nice that it's just a side quest this time. That's cool. And it just develops the story in a cool way. And it does allow for a lot of just different, unique things to happen that we haven't seen from this plane before. So I think it's cool.
That's actually really funny that you describe it that way, as like how Ravnica has felt recently, because that's actually one of the backbone motives for the villain of the set as to why they're doing what they're doing. So,
well, I guess it's going to get hairy.
Yeah.
Alrighty, let's dive into these set mechanics. Let's see. The first one we have is disguise. And remember how we were saying a lot of these mechanics are just reskins of old mechanics plus word 2. This is one of those. Even wizards themselves say, remember morph? It's morph, but it's got word 2. That's literally all it does. John, if you want to explain how the mechanic works, go for it.
Yeah, sure. So disguising, and we might as well just lump cloak in here as well, because both are going to kind of do a very similar thing, but I'll distinguish them apart. Disguising and cloaking is basically going to put creatures or other cards, with the case of cloak, you're going to make them as face down 2/2s. This is almost identical to how morph interacts with the game. Cards with morph have the ability to go down as face down 2/2s with no names, no other abilities, and can be flipped up. Disguise and cloak is very identical to that. Cards put onto the battlefield with disguise or cloak, in addition to being 2/2s with no names, no colors, no mana costs, nothing else, they have ward 2, which is that newer form of hexproof that they've been using over the last couple of years, which I think, honestly. It does make a nice fair balance of cards, because it's like ward at a particular number up or a certain like detrimental cost kind of basically reads as hexproof, because sometimes you just do not want to pay that extra cost on your Path to Exile, Path to Exile costing 4 just isn't worth it. So that might as well be hexproof in some cases.
Yeah, you're totally right about that.
But that is basically cool. So once these cards are put face down onto the battlefield, either by disguise, which is being cast, or cloak, which usually comes from the top of a library. I think there might be one or two that gets cloaked from graveyard. I haven't read through like the commander cards yet, but cloaking can come from somewhere else other than hand. Once they're down as 2/2s, if it is a creature that is under there, they can be flipped face up for either their disguise cost that they have written on the card, or if it was something that was cloaked, you can flip it for its mana cost up in the stat line for the creatures itself. Non-creature cards that are cloaked cannot be flipped, but they can be bounced.
Interesting.
So that's cool. So you can like flicker them in and out. That's a really cool trick I use with Breako. I use manifest cards in Breako to take artifacts and enchantments and blink them out, blink them back in, then they come in as their permanent side face up. It's a really fun trick.
Super cool.
And yeah, so a very large portion of this set is cards that do disguise and cloak, and they all almost all of them have some kind of ability written on them that says when the disguised creature is turned face up, do a thing.
Which is cool. Yeah, it's a little Yu-Gi-Oh for me, but it is cool. So that's I don't know.
Face down unknown creatures, right? Like the last time this kind of game mechanic was used very heavily in a draft set was the recently added to Arena Khans of Tarkir block, basically.
Wow.
Manifest and Morph and Megamorph was a big part of that draft structure, and it's an interesting gameplay element because it's like, what could it be? You know, am I going to blast removal into something that's going to turn face up and have hexproof or drain me when I kill it? Or am I going to swing into a 3/1 with first strike?
Who knows?
You never know. It could be anything.
Yeah, I do think it is cool, and it's very flavorful for this set because it's like you're uncovering the mysteries of what's happening in the game.
Yeah.
And you're going to uncover some suspects, and that leads us to our next mechanic, the suspect mechanic. That is a lot of the times attached to an ETB effect where a creature enters the battlefield and it either suspects it's wow, can't talk. Let me run that back. It either suspects itself or it suspects a different permanent on the battlefield, and it makes that, or a different creature on the battlefield. It makes that creature not able to block, and it gives them menace. So it has a pretty interesting offensive and defensive capabilities. So
yeah, it's a really interesting one because like the idea behind it is like you are now creating this prime target that, yeah, the thing can't block anymore, but granting it menace, your opponent is going to have to throw some blockers at it eventually. Otherwise, because if you suspect a really big creature, right, something that's got 4, 5, 6 power, 6 power with menace is going to start draining a library.
yeah,
Or not a library, I should say, a life total. Sorry. That kind of thing is going to start pushing through very, very fast. And so they're either going to have to throw blockers at it and you're going to be taking other creatures down with it, or you're just going to start killing your opponent really, really fast.
yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. It's going to be a very like combat tricky set with that kind of situation. A lot of swinging, which I do love. I think that's like something this format is kind of leaned away from. When you have to like swing out and kill 3 opponents, it's easier to combo them out, but the more things we can add to this game that allow combat strategies to actually shine more, I think is really cool. Yeah, so that's suspect, and collecting evidence is our next new set mechanic, unless you have anything else to say about suspect. It's pretty simple, but we'll move on to collecting the evidence here. This one's probably the most like complicated, I guess.
Complex, yes.
It reminds me of some of the LCI mechanics of like Descend and stuff like that, where it has to do with the graveyard. Notably, it is not delve. The number associated with collecting evidence does not mean the number of cards you have to exile from your graveyard. It means the CMC of the cards you need to exile from your graveyard. So the way this mechanic works is it's collect evidence and then a number listed next to that keyword. And that basically means to collect evidence, you need to be able to exile whatever that number's CMC of cards from your graveyard, or a graveyard in some cases, which is pretty cool. I'll talk about a card later that has the ability to do that on tap.
Yeah. So like an example of that is like if a card has a number on it that says, in addition, you can collect evidence 6. To do that, you would need to either exile a number of cards or even a card to match or exceed the mana value written on that card. So if you have 1 card in your graveyard with a mana value of 6, that 1 card can get you to the entire collect evidence. Or if you want to do 3 cards with mana value 2 each, 2, 4, 6, bam, you're right there. So how the number of cards that you'll end up exiling to collect evidence can vary depending on how you have structured your deck and how many things you want to throw into exile. But generally speaking, it's a flexible number.
I think this mechanic is really cool because it allows you to utilize your graveyard or your opponent's graveyard as graveyard hate, which is cool. And it's just kind of like an alternate thing to do in the game. More mechanics, more things to do. So,
Graveyard kicker.
yeah, really weird, but pretty cool. That brings us to our last set mechanic, and that is cases. I almost completely missed this one earlier because I thought these were just sagas that looked slightly different. That's on me. But they're not.
It's hard to tell them apart that they've been using these cards that have the new like vertical structure on them with the artwork, right? We have a couple different variations of that kind of style of looking card now, and it's like it gets hard to tell them apart. They've even mixed it up themselves. Like you probably don't even remember that the sagas from Dominaria United had read ahead at the top of them.
No,
it just blends in entirely. Yeah, they were sagas that you could choose what chapter to start them on. Most people forgot that.
Whoa.
Yeah, it just blended right into the top of the reminder text for the saga. It was like, oh, by the way, these sagas can write on chapter 3. Here you go.
Dang. Crazy. The more you know. Thank you, Oracle. He's got
Hashtag
it.
thank you, Oracle.
And I guess the way cases work is it's more similar to classes like Druid class or something like that, where the first chapter, I don't know what to really call that section of the card because it's not a saga, but the first section of the card happens when it enters the battlefield, and it's just something that continues to happen or happens once depending on how it's worded. The second section of the card always says to solve, and then whatever that specific case needs to solve it. And then the third section of the card is something you can do when the case is solved.
Yep. So that check for the solve is a state base that checks at your end step. That if you meet the condition of what the card says to solve it, you can then basically, like I think there like some pre-release kits or somewhere along the line, maybe the bundles are going to have these little like punch outs that you can like put on these cases that say solved. I believe. I think that's what I saw in promo material, but it'll check at your end step to see if you meet the condition, and if you have, you then have the top portion and the bottom portion of that enchantment just on your battlefield ready to go. So if you never solve them, like if you disregard everything else what the enchantment does, if you never solve the case at all, you have enchantments that give you abilities just in their top section flat. That's it. And then you just happen to go into an extra benefit if you meet whatever the solve condition is.
Yep. Yeah, the one I'm looking at, I just have it pulled up from Wizards' website. It's literally what they're using to demonstrate the mechanic. Case of the Filched Falcon. So it's 1 blue for when this case enters the battlefield. Investigate, which is pretty good. You make a clue for 1 blue. So not bad. And then the rest is just gravy on top. I think that covers all of the new set mechanics as far as
pretty much
what
other than what you had just mentioned is that obviously with detectives and cluing and stuff like that, investigate is a huge part of this set as well. Investigate is an old mechanic though, it's just returning into this set, so all the same attributes apply with investigate here. You get a clue token. Clue tokens draw you cards, and there's tons of effects in this set that care about having artifacts or clues specifically entering the battlefield, effects that are allowing you to draw more than 1 card a turn, which is what clues allow you to do, or when you sacrifice, or just investigate just in general. Like when you have the trigger go off that say investigate, there are certain cards in this set that benefit off of that kind of thing. So investigate's great. It's basically card draw for almost every color.
Yeah. It's really cool. We have both picked some legendary creatures that we like in this set and some other cards in the 99. We can dive into that section right now, unless you have anything else to add to the set mechanic section.
No, I think that covers it. Would you like to start? Would you like me to go first?
I can kick us off here.
Go for it.
I was looking through, and Aurelia, the Law Above, is pretty cool. I've always thought Aurelia is kind of a cool character in this Ravnica universe, and I've definitely had like Boros just combat decks in the past that I've since taken all of them apart. But this would be a fun card to build around. I'm literally scrolling to try to find this card right
Yeah.
now. All right, let me read it to you guys.
It's a really good one.
Yeah. So it's 3 red, white, Aurelia of the Law above, legendary creature angel, 4/4 with flying, vigilance, and haste. So already pretty great. But it says whenever a player attacks with 3 or more creatures, you draw a card. Notably, that does not just mean yourself. That is every single person. So there's all kinds of shenanigans you can get into with, like, you could play a weird group hug version of this deck where you're just giving other people tokens and helping them swing with them. Like if you start goading everyone with like taunt for the rampart from the ramparts, that card.
Yeah, goad is what I immediately thought of when I read something like this, because her 2 triggers care specifically just about when creatures in general swing. Yes. And that's exactly what goad wants you to do.
So her second trigger, whenever a player attacks with 5 or more creatures, Aurelia of the Law above deals 3 damage to each of your opponents, and then you gain 3 life. So that's pretty sick. This allows you, this gives, like, I personally wouldn't build this as a group hug deck, but this gives group hug a win con on their commander if you want it, which is sick. You just give everyone stuff, goad all of it, and then you just sit there and watch everyone kill each other.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so cool. Yeah. So you described it specifically. Yeah. Her triggers that are stated on there, they are not restricted to if you are doing the combat. So in constructed 1v1, if you are doing the attacking or your opponent is doing the attacking at you, if they meet that condition to have this trigger, it fires off. And the other really cool part about this card is that if the attacks with 5 or more part triggers, it's going to be an additive on top of the attack of 3 or more. It's not a replacement.
Yeah, it's
so
both.
If someone swings at you with 5 creatures, you're going to lightning helix everybody and draw a card. That's super.
That's amazing.
That is so good.
Yeah, do you want to talk about one of yours, John?
I'm ready for it here.
Sweet.
Yeah, no shockers. Dirty Azorius, dirty control player over here immediately jumped to Alquist Proft, the Master Sleuth, as a super interesting one to talk about here. This was one of the earliest cards that they showed off as part of previews for the set. He's the central investigator of the story, basically the allegory for Sherlock Holmes, more or less, for the story purposes of this. Alquist is 1 white and a blue for a 3/3 legendary human detective. He has vigilance. When he enters the battlefield, you investigate. That creates you a clue token. And his own activated ability of X, white, blue, blue, tap, and sacrifice a clue, draw X cards, and gain X life. So he allows you to pop your clues at the same cost as Sphinx's Revelation, which is an instant that says blue, blue, white, X, draw X cards, and gain X life.
Shoot.
Yeah. Wow. So as long as you have himself and a clue, you have Sphinx's Revelation for as many clues as you want to pop off.
Dang.
Having naturally vigilance as well means that he can also start doing a little bit of combat if you needed him to, and then he can hold his tap ability for either like your end of turn or off turn on someone else's. So which makes me immediately think, because back in the day, Sphinx's Revelation for both like standard and modern and like that, very, very heavily played as your stabilizer piece in control matches, right? Holding up your mana off turn to do counter spells and removal and things of that nature. Against your opponent to basically control their board, hence the control meta. But then if you have nothing on their board that needs answered, you just Sphinx's Rev and just refill your hand and regain your life. It was the perfect. I think it's been outclassed a smidge by newer cards, right? Because Sphinx's Rev is an old card now. Sphinx's Rev was over 10 years old now.
Wow.
So...
Gosh, that's crazy.
I know. We just crushed us a little bit, right? So, but I think it still holds. It still holds as a fantastic card. I still play a couple copies in several of my Commander decks, and it is a very good card for Commander as well. Stabilizing your life and being able to just put an X value into the cards that you draw, those kind of cards always have practical purpose to them.
So sick.
So I like this kind of legendary creature as a build around, as a, hey, this is going to be somebody that I'm going to be setting up clues on my turn and then popping those clues as Sphinx's Revelation off turn, and going to play it as a control shell.
I love that. That's a cool commander. I personally love amazing card draw in the command zone. Like, that's, as someone who actually doesn't play commanders that typically allow me to draw cards easily, like, that's something I'm always wanting more of. So I think that's really freaking cool. And if you are going to go build a stacks deck around this or something, like, you should make sure you can get to your win cons. And that's a great way to do that. So
exactly. He also just very easily slots right into the recently shown off as well. There's a Bant colors for a Clue commander deck that is coming out along with this set as well. So he fits very nice right into that as well, because your whole deck is going to be built around investigating and clues. So Alquist being in the 99 will help you just draw more cards with those clues, allowing you to do, again, just allowing you to have Sphinx's Revelation on every single one of your clues.
Yeah. Busted. Absolutely
very
busted. Judith Carnage Connoisseur is the second creature legendary creature I was thinking about building or theorizing a deck around. It's 3 black red for a legendary creature, Human Shaman. That's a 3/4. What Judith can do is whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you choose one. That spell gains Death Touch and Lifelink, or you create a 2/2 red imp creature token with, when this creature dies, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. So right off the bat, this card gives you 2 very distinct build paths for a deck. You could try to do both, but it's probably better if you choose one and kind of stick with that route. Obviously you're in black, so if you're making 2/2s that die and deal damage when they do that, that's gonna be a much stronger option. But because her ability synergizes with casting instants and sorceries, you have access to literally every red damage spell in the game in this color. So all of the spells now gain lifelink, and there's so many, like, you gain life, your opponents lose life, synergies in black, that this is pretty sick in both directions. Like, either of those are very valid options to build around. And as I was looking through this set, I was actually just like piecing together cards that would work well in this, and man, there's just so many.
The lifelink is definitely a very huge part of that, but I think the sillier part of giving the spells Death Touch, I think, is actually even more silly, because you can turn effects that say hit all opponents' creatures for 1 damage. Suddenly, that now is like 3-4 mana to wipe your opponent's board and gain you a life for every single thing that died.
Yep. Daggercaster Basilisk, which is like 3 mana for a 2/2 or something. It's a creature that deals 1 damage to all of your opponent's creatures when it comes in. That is now a board wipe that is not affecting you.
Instants and sorceries, not on creatures.
Well, my bad.
But I like the idea, though. I like the idea,
Wave, that does work. That's
there you go.
Red,
yeah.
3 and a red.
Your Toralf knowledge kicking in. There you go.
I know. I'm a filthy red burn player.
You know it.
Or just like Earthquake for 1. Like, that normally only hurts token synergies, but now it's like that just wrecks everyone's life. Obviously, it does kill your own things, because Earthquake for 1 hits all creatures that have fly.
All right, now imagine this combo. So you're doing the whole Judith thing, you're doing instants and sorceries, and you're just building up the imps, the ones that say they deal 2 to each opponent, and then the next spell you do is Blasphemous Act, and decide to give that one lifelink and Death Touch. You have now gained 13 life per creature, and every single one of your imps that now dies to the Blasphemous Act.
That's so dumb. I want to build this now. Holy crap.
That is so good. No,
we can get into our 99 picks later in the video, but I have looked at just a bunch from this set alone. I tried to kind of limit myself to mostly cards from the set, because I think a good set has synergies inside of it, and you don't have to look elsewhere. So, but we can get in those later. And there's some pretty crazy stuff that this card wants to do. So this
Yep.
could be pretty high powered. I didn't even think about the Blasphemous Act situation. That is crazy. That is absolutely nuts. Especially if you had some red instants that like are already making tokens, like Burn Down the House would be an amazing include here, because you can choose to just make 5 tokens right out of the gate and then make another with the 2/2 imp and then just keep going crazy like that and have more targets for more lifelink targets for that Blasphemous Act or whatever you're choosing to do there. So I guess you could Aetherflux Reservoir after that, because you can this is
Rakdos life gain is just such a different and unique take, you know?
Yeah. You could do some crazy,
it's
like,
very fun.
Urabrask with Bergie and do like some crazy storm stuff. Absolutely just go crazy with this one.
Well, how about talking about different takes on things? Let's go ahead and shift gears to Tristani 3 Whispers, which is one that I wanted to talk about because this one just feels radically different than the other versions of Tristani that have come out from other Ravnica sets before, and it just feels like you could build. I'll explain what I mean by this. Let me read the card first. It is green, white, and a hybrid of Selesnya mana. It's in the middle there, actually, technically. So green, hybrid Selesnya, and white. For a legendary Dryad is a 4/4. So on rate, it's 3 mana for a 4/4, which is already super. So it makes a really good blocker. Normal Tristani cards have all kinds of weird like ETB or other card creature token effects that care. And this one still definitely cares about creatures, but the type of things that it can do is vastly different. This one reads very simple. She just has 3 activated abilities. 1 in a green, give a target creature death touch until end of turn. Hybrid Selesnya to give a target creature vigilance until end of turn. Or 2 in a white and give a target creature double strike until end of turn.
That's sick.
That's it. So my mindset when reading a card like this, it immediately reminded me of Kenrith, Returned King. Kenrith decks tend to be built in a very, you're going to be choosing the politics of the board based on his 5 activated abilities that he has the capability of doing. Now, normal Kenrith nowadays is built as a very combo heavy thing, but the implication and the idea of what Kenrith is supposed to be is that since all of his activated abilities could target most any creature or most any player, you would be playing Kenrith as a political power piece. Hey, you want to give your creatures haste and trample, swing them over there. Hey, do you need a card? Why don't you take that thing and remove that piece that I can't? I'll also reanimate your board wipe for you. You know what I mean? That's what you were supposed to do with Kenrith. And Tristani feels like a very interesting fixed version of that. All 3 of those activated abilities that are on the card, if you'll notice, they are not restricted to creature that you control. They can absolutely be used on your own creatures, but I think a very fun and interesting way, in a similar line to how Aurelia would make a very fun goad commander, you build Tristani as well as a very combat-focused force or encourage your opponents to be attacking each other. They're like, hey, you want to get your dude through to this other one? Cool, I'll give yours double strike and death touch, and that will absolutely trade off with the other thing on the other side of the table.
Wow, this is cool.
Yeah, give your own creatures.
Breaks the color pie a little bit, giving Selesnya death touch access.
Green. That's why the ability comes from green. Green has a lot of death touch to it.
You're right. I guess I'm not as used to seeing that, but Seraph or whatever, like that's pretty standard now, I guess. Yeah, this is a really, really cool commander. I like this a lot.
Yeah. If you really hate your playgroup, though, this Tristani feels like a very interesting new commander that you could have as the leader of your Hate Bears deck. Hate Bears and Pillow Fort. Because if your opponents don't have the access or the capability of casting spells into you or attacking into you, like Hate Bear Pillow Fort hiding behind your Ghostly Prisons and Sphere of Safeties, and like effects also in green, and like give all your things hexproof, give all your things indestructible. They can't start getting through you. They're going to start hitting each other until someone finds an answer. Tristani can then boost that combat against each other. Well,
you
can't
just step on the gas and just power it up. Like, oh,
well,
you
sorry, you can't. You can't swing into me. Your attacker that you just went through unblocked, it now has double strike. Oh, did you block over here? That one gains death touch.
Crazy. Oh my gosh.
My hate bears, I'll give them vigilance.
Dude, this is sick.
It's very political. It feels like the fixed Kenrith. Like, again, what Kenrith was supposed to be as a group political piece. I like it. I like it a lot. It's very different for what Selesnya wants to do with creatures. I think it's very, very cool. I like it a lot.
Yes. That's honestly one of the coolest enchantment oriented Selesnya commanders I've seen lately.
Mm-hmm. Because again, it still kind of does the Tristani thing of like, it cares about having creatures in play, both yours and your opponents. It just does something a bit different with it. It kind of makes it focused more on making sure you're all going to combat with each other.
Yeah, which, like I said earlier in the video, I think that's really sick. I think that commander needs more combat. That's not like Voltron based or commander damage based. I think that's really cool. Unless you have anything else to add about Tristani, I'm going to talk about Krenko, because this set is stupid.
Krenko! Let's go, buddy.
Oh my god, dude. Krenko, Baron of Tin Street, 2 and a red for a legendary creature goblin with haste. 3/3 also. He has tap and sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on each goblin you control. So that's not crazy. You can't really abuse that because he has to tap to do that. But his the second part of his card says, whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay 1 red. If you do, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. It gains haste until the end of the turn. So, okay, so they made this crazy card that's also in the set called Crime Novelist. Crime Novelist, 2 and a red, creature goblin bard, 1/3. Whenever you sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on Crime Novelist and add a red mana. So this set is all about clues. And the way this card synergizes with the new Krenko is whenever you sacrifice like a treasure or a clue or whatever it is you're sacking as far as an artifact goes, you can make a red mana for it, and then you can use that red mana to make a goblin when you have Krenko out. So plus, then you can use Krenko to put +1/+1 counters on everything. And then this just starts going absolutely buck wild because it's Krenko. You can play all the other Krenkos in the deck, make tons of goblins, Academy Manufacturer, Dockside, Zorn.
All those apply. You know manufacturers here anytime we have a set that has those things. Oh, Lord of the Rings, come stomping into the battlefield with your foods. Here you go.
This, I don't know. I don't want to say I'm calling it now because I don't know this game well enough to say things like that. But this might be a card that could get Dockside banned because this plus Dockside is really dumb. I can't imagine a world where you have both of those cards out on the field and you lose. That just doesn't make sense to me. So, yeah, Crime Novelist is crazy. The new Krenko is really crazy. If you build a deck with all those cards inside of them, that would be a pretty strong goblin swing wide.
Really fun,
fast. Yeah.
I'll bring up one more real fast, and we'll start going into talking about some other cool cards that we like for the 99. But I know since Joseph's not here this evening, he would want me to absolutely make sure that we talk about Ansrag, the Quake Mole. This thing is nutty. Did you read it?
Yes, dude.
It's so good. 2 red and a green for a legendary mole god. It's an 8/4. When it becomes blocked, untap each creature you control. After this combat phase, there's an additional combat phase. So it's one of those kinds of cards that gives you additional combats, with the trigger on this one just being when it becomes blocked. But that just means no one's going to block it. Well, hold on. Strap in. 3 red, red, green, green. Ansrag must be blocked each combat this turn if able. each combat.
Wow.
So you swing with him during your first combat, pay the ability, fantastic, he becomes blocked. He doesn't die in that combat. If he does not get eaten by a blocker, then he gets to untap during your next combat. And when you get to go to that combat, he still has the text on him that he has to be blocked. Oh, did he become blocked again? Please have another combat.
Oh, crap. Oh, wait. Oh, crap.
Yeah, he must be blocked each combat if able. If you've got the means to make him indestructible, that's a bunch of combats you can do. And even if he's not indestructible, if he gets chump blocked by something small, he does not die in the first combat, he's going to be around for your second combat. When he inevitably does die in the second combat, he's still going to be on the board to trigger you for a third combat.
Oh my gosh. And you can play Lure in that deck, which is an aura enchantment that makes creatures block.
You could do that kind of deck. Yeah, find the means to get his toughness up higher. Actually, a very interesting one for a friend of mine who was going to probably put this into a deck of hers. She plays Godzilla, King of the Monsters, or the Zilortha, Strength Incarnate, I believe the normal card is called or whatever, is a 5-mana Gruul legendary that says that creatures have to have lethal damage assigned by their power instead of their toughness.
Whoa.
So in the case of Anzrag here, he does not die to 4 toughness. He would actually have to die to 8 power.
Oh my gosh.
Nutty. Super nutty. That's the kind of commander that cares about creatures having a higher power than their toughness. He fits right into that. And vice versa. If you're playing Anzrag as your commander, Godzilla, King of the Monsters goes definitely into the 99 of this deck as well. He seems really, really fun. I mean, it's just, there's not much really else to describe here. This is just big, dumb combat mole.
Also, it's an 8/4 for 4 mana.
That's dumb. 8/4 for 4 that if it becomes blocked gives you another combat.
Yeah, it's commander damage already. Like 8, you can't just eat 8 commander damage. Like you can do that exactly 2 times before you die. So you're pretty much forced to block it even without like cards like Lure making you block. Yeah. You can't really take more than 1 or 2 hits from this thing and then you go down. So this is infinite combat steps stapled onto a commander. This is so cool. I love that. That's really, really, really neat.
All right, let's go ahead and power through some good picks from the main set, and we'll go ahead and start moving into wrap up. Yeah,
we
sorry.
Should talk
go ahead.
About Slime Against Humanity. So,
well, that's going to be here, right? It's not a legendary card, so yeah, we'll just go ahead. Go ahead. You started with it. Yeah, go ahead.
Ooh, actually, let me pull it up.
Okay, so I'll real fast though. So he's super excited to get into it. This is actually one that Joseph, again, he says he's not hanging out, so he gave us his notes to pass along here, but this is one that he's planning on building himself. Slime Against Humanity is one of the newest of that type of card that has the text available on it that says you can have any number of them available in your deck. Very similar to Rat Colony, Persistent Petitioners, Shadowborn Apostles, Dragon's Approach. One of those kinds of cards that they are the few exception to the commander rule that allows you to have duplicates of the same card in your deck. So any of those types of cards are always really interesting and spicy to take a look at. Jared, do you want to go tell us what Slime Against Humanity actually does?
Yes. So it's a 2 and a green for a sorcery. Create a 0/0 green ooze creature token with trample. Put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is 2 plus the total number of cards you own in exile and in your graveyard that are oozes or are named Slime Against Humanity. So this obviously synergizes with collecting evidence because that needs you to exile cards from your graveyard. That's crazy though.
Mm-hmm. So how the card reads is the very first one that you cast at minimum with nothing else in your graveyard, nothing else in exile. The very first one is going to make you a 2/2. And then every single copy that you cast, you forgot to read the bottom half of the card. The bottom half is the part on it that says your deck can have any number of copies of it. That's how it feeds into itself. Yes. So the very first one will give you a 2/2. And then every future one you do past that point, if it'll check the ones that you have in your graveyard. And very cool that it mentions it from your exile as well. One type of fight against that someone would try to do against a deck like this is say, rest in peace, hit your graveyard. Now all your ooze cards are gone. Aha! Slime Against Humanity checks exile too.
Nope.
So you're not just blown out when somebody Bajuka bugs your graveyard.
Dude,
which is fantastic.
This is crazy. It's also like pretty intense power creep because they're saying exile does not matter to this deck either.
Yeah, it's going to be very hard to kind of stop this deck from doing the thing it wants to do. Now, granted, that thing that the deck is doing, all it's doing is putting a single creature into play. Yeah, that creature gets incrementally bigger and bigger. So you obviously have to have a sort of deck backbone around that of like either putting a token into play or caring about +1/+1 counters, or I suppose trying to do ooze tribal. That could be really fun. But you know, the card by itself I don't think is incredibly busted. It just can be busted when you're doing these sort of synergies that your deck can have any number of types of decks can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Throw these cards into a deck that allows you to go in other colors outside of green. You know, black, go ahead and tutor out all your copies of it. Red, play it with impact tremors and friends of that nature.
You also green has all the Ozolith type effects.
Ozolith, token doublers. Yep, green white. You know,
those +1/+1 counters. You get to store them up and use them later, which is so crazy.
Yeah.
Man, this is really neat. I can see a very cool deck being made from this that could be like incredibly hard to keep down.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to say. I don't know if Slime Against Humanity would be the strongest of this type of card. I think that still does go to Shadowboard Apostles. Just because you can just go and tutor a big, powerful thing right into play. Dragon's Approach is very close to that as well, because you can just go get artifacts and just get dragons. You know what I mean? It's very close to Shadowboard Apostle.
Slime Against Humanity, old Gnawbone and you win the game.
Yeah. Slime Against Humanity, I think, is definitely going to be up there for no other reason than that it can allow you to just continue to do what the kind of deck wants to do, even if your other copies of Slime hit exile. That's one key benefit that it has over all the other types of this style of card, which I think is really, really cool. It's very nice that they put that on there.
Is this just like a sneaky throwback to The Blob, the movie? How that thing is like unstoppable?
It could be, maybe. I mean, this isn't a Monster Mash set, but I've seen and I've read a couple of things that there are very clear like references and nods to mystery and detective thrillers, you know. And there were a lot of, I mean, heck, even let's go classic Scooby-Doo, you know what I mean? A lot of the cartoons of that show were like, oh, the big slime monster or the big alien freak, you know?
Yeah.
You know, the ghost miner, you know what I mean? So it feels very like, ooh, spooky, supernatural.
So flavor win and a cool card. In a weird way, it's kind of like, if you choose to build this card into your deck, this is the deck now. Like, even though it's not going to be in your command zone, like this is your Slime Against Humanity deck because you have to run so many copies of it.
Yeah, and that's very cool. I'll keep us moving along though. I'd like to bring up another one. So this one is not a legendary creature of the set, but since we now only receive about one, maybe two, we haven't seen any other future ones past this point. If you've maybe you haven't noticed before, they have dialed back how many planeswalkers are in a set now. If you've noticed that, Lost Caverns of Ixalan only had Quintorius. And Wilds of Eldraine only had Ashiok. So
I personally love that. I am so done with like Super Friends decks that don't need any more planeswalkers to go in them.
Yeah, it's dialed them back so that they're not like there's not as many of them rampant around. But I think this might just be subjective, but the doing one per set has like super dialed in what that planeswalker can do, and I think all of them recently have been stellar. And I think Kaya, Spirits' Justice, is definitely no exception to that. This one is very cool. She feeds into her own abilities quite well. 2 white and a black legendary planeswalker Kaya. She comes in at 3 loyalty. Her static ability is a block, so strap in. Static ability says whenever one or more creatures you control and or creature cards in your graveyard are put into exile, you may choose a creature card from among them. Until end of turn, a target token you control becomes a copy of it, except it has flying. So if it did nothing else on the card by itself, anytime you get something of yours sent off into exile, either from your graveyard or from the battlefield, you can have any token that you control become a copy with flying.
Dude.
And not restricted back on its power and toughness either, like other Kayas have done before. There are other versions of like Kaya that have been able to get clones of cards from specific zones, but have turned them into 1/1 spirits. This one just straight up says it becomes a copy of it. So whatever its power and toughness was, fantastic. Your clue token is now that with flying.
Yes, that's sick.
Yeah. And then her 3 activated abilities that she's able to do all feed into that static ability. The +2 does a surveil and then exile a card from a graveyard. A +1 makes a 1/1 white and black spirit creature token with flying. And the -2 exiles a target creature you control. And for each other player, exile up to 1 target creature that player controls.
Dude.
So yeah, all 3 of those feed into what she wants to do. If you don't already have a token, her +1 makes you the token you need, and then her other 2, her +2 and her -2, help control things on the board that, yes, if you choose to remove, like say with that -2, you have to exile one of your owns, but if you have the token, like you're not really losing a creature. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's really neat.
Yeah, you're straight up removing things from opponents' boards while being able to keep yours.
Dude, I love that. Give me more of that.
It's super cool. I like it a lot.
A card that I was looking at for going into Judith, because any black deck that's worth its salt recurs things from the graveyard, is Soul Innervation. It's 3 and a black for an enchantment that has flash. When Soul Innervation enters the battlefield, target creature gets -4/-4 until end of turn. So it's a kill spell for most things that aren't humongous. And honestly, like even like Ansrag it's an 8/4. So most of the things in the set died of -4/-4. And then whenever 1 or more creature cards leave your graveyard, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain a life. So that's just strong. That's just good. And if you're recurring any number of creatures out of your graveyard, I honestly will probably grab this for that Shirei deck that Joseph built me for Christmas.
Yeah,
that's sick.
Sir Conrad effects are very strong, and like it can trigger way more often than you would think it can.
Yeah, you set this up right, and this has people really hurting for life totals in like 2 turns.
You got it.
So yeah, I love Soul Innervation. I think it's a cool card. Anything else you want to talk about?
I feel like I'm probably going to be stealing Leyline of the Guild Pact from you, but I want to talk. I want to talk about Leyline of the Guild Pact. This thing is absolutely nutty. All right, strap in for this casting cost. It's a weird one. You've got Hybrid Selesnya, Hybrid Simic. Sorry, I'm reading the card. Man, these tiny little fonts. Can't do it. Tell you what.
Can we talk about the font on the freaking art cards for this set for a second?
Yeah, the dossier showcase fonts. It's a little weird. I'm not a fan of those.
Wizards, please stop printing cards that you can't read easily. Thank you.
All right, let me try this again here. So, Leyline of the Guild Pact is Hybrid Selesnya, Hybrid Simic, Hybrid Golgari, and Hybrid Gruul mana. So 4 mana to cast, but you can split it amongst, well, the only mono color that you can cast it with is green, but you can split it amongst some combination of the 5 colors, right? So it has all 5 colors in its color identity. So this is going to be a 5-color card that can only barely be played in 5-color commander decks, but the hybrid costs that it has, if you need to cast it, we're gonna get to the caveat on that in a minute, but if you need to cast this card, it has a very flexible casting cost, so that if you are missing some colors of mana, you're not just immediately screwed from being able to cast this. The caveat to that, though, is going to be this is a leyline. It does the leyline thing. So if Leyline of the Guild Pact is in your opening hand, you may begin the game with it on the battlefield. So if you happen to draw this as the first thing that you begin the game with, it can start down in play for free. But if you are not getting it down for free, it is only 4 mana to cast. It's a very cheap and flexible casting cost to get down. What does this leyline actually do? Well, here we are. Each non-land permanent you control is all colors, and lands you control are every basic land type in addition to their other types. What that means is that when lands gain the basic land types, that inherently grants those lands the ability to tap for that land color.
Dude.
So this reads like the most recent one would probably be Dryad of the Elysian Grove, but other ones would also be like Chromatic Lantern, where your lands can produce anything.
Dude. Yeah, it's just to me it's better than Chromatic Lantern.
Lantern adds mana itself, so I think there's
true.
still utility. There's still utility purpose to that, but this has the upside of being able to have the potential to start as your turn 0 on a Wooburg deck. What is the number one biggest struggle with playing a 5-color commander deck that isn't Ramos?
You have to get all 5 colors of mana to play your commander.
Or just anything, right?
Yeah, or anything.
Right?
Most of the cards in your deck.
Yeah, what does your 5-color deck do if you can't find your green to cast Rampant Growth?
Dude, that is, oh my god.
You're just boned.
I've been there so many times. It's actually crazy. Yeah,
right? Not everybody is strapping their 3, 4, 5-color decks with fetch lands and shock lands and duels.
Yeah,
so
I personally love this because it lowers the barrier to entry for building a 5-color deck. Mm-hmm. Because the problem with them is they're either terrible because your mana base is horrible, or the mana base is incredibly expensive, and that's the only reason it's able to function. So I think this opens up the avenues for other people who aren't trying to proxy all their lands or like do whatever, buy all the expensive fetches and do that stuff. Like this is cool. I like this move. This is a good move from Wizards.
Yeah. Is the card perfect? No, obviously not. Like you're not always going to have it in your opening game, so you can't bank on it. But the games that you are able to start with it and play, all you just need at that point is just lands to get going, and your own 5-color deck will be able to keep up with everyone else who is only playing like 1 or 2 or maybe even 3.
Yeah. And this is a good card to mulligan for. Like if you are playing 5 colors and it's not in your opening hand, even if the rest of your hand is good, if it's not that good, you should probably try to mulligan and get this. Because it literally just unlocks the game for you. So this is a card we all freaked out about when it came out or when we saw it for the first time. So nice pick on this one.
Yeah, I've got one more. If unless you got any more,
take it.
All right.
I have a few more, but go for it.
Okay, I'll just briefly, because I think this one seems really, really wacky as well. Forensic Gadgeteer. 2 and a blue for a 2/3 Vidalcan Artificer Detective. It has 2 abilities on it. It says, whenever you cast an artifact spell, investigate. That does not say once per turn. Thank you, Wizards. Please stop putting that on cards. We want to do the cool thing.
Yeah, let us do the cool stuff, even if it's incredibly busted.
Well, this leads into the second part then. Activated abilities of artifacts you control cost 1 less to activate. This effect can't reduce the mana cost to less than 1 mana. Again, not restricted to the first activated ability you do per turn, and it is not restricted to token or non-token.
That's sick. Dude, okay, so I actually have this thing where I don't play cards that only say you can do this once per turn, except for Ramos, because I can blink him. So funny story in the Discord, which you should definitely join by clicking the link in the bottom of this video. We were talking about a card that I was like, oh, does that have a soft once per turn on it? Or earlier in the Discord, it's the an Esper guy. I can't remember the rest of the card, but It runs you through dungeons on ETBs. But yeah, I specifically don't play cards that have that clause on there because I want to just
I want to do the broken
stuff.
thing.
Yeah, I want to break the card and make it awesome.
Yeah.
Don't limit me. Don't limit me like that.
And this kind of card reads like that. So by itself, what it wants you to be doing with its two abilities is casting artifacts to generate you clues, that the clue tokens then have their sacrifice ability reduced by 1 mana. So you can now draw a card for 1 mana. So it's now 1-1 card draw, which is phenomenal. That's a great rate for card. You literally can't get better, until you start looking at stuff like lower
only
than
one card I can think of that does that naturally. That's Visions of the Beyond. It's 1 blue for 1 card.
There's lots of other like cantrippy cards that are like cast it for a blue, draw a card. There's a lot that are like this. 1 mana for 1 card is the standard rate on what a card should cost. So this allowing you to pop clues for that single mana to draw those cards, brilliant. That's so cool. This is also just going to be phenomenal for artifact decks in general, because generally speaking, even apart from the clue thing, artifact decks want artifacts. That's certain cards that say, hey, this is a thing you get to do for X artifacts you control, affinity or power equal to artifacts you control. So this reads like Psy, Master Thopterist is the way I read it. Cast an artifact, make an artifact.
Oof.
Throw Academy Manufacturer in here too. And, now you're doing cast an artifact, making an artifact that then is coming with 3 other artifacts. 2 other, I should say.
Oh my gosh.
Brilliant. This is so busted. And the fact that, yes, it says that you can't drop an activation cost to less than 1, but it says since it's not limited to just the first activated ability you do, there is some combo potential out of a card like this here that allows you to drop the activation cost on something that normally is costed in such a way. The immediate big one is Basalt Monolith. Basalt Monolith has the ability to tap for 3 and then doesn't untap normally except on its activated ability on it that says 3 mana, untap it. So if that cost is reduced by 1, you can then tap the Monolith for 3 and then untap itself for 2. You generate 1 colorless mana every time you do that.
Bruh.
That's a very known combo. That's a thing. That's a very there's lots of other ways. Yeah, there's lots of other ways you can have that happen, but this is just another piece that allows you to do that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really cool. Speaking of artifacts, Barbed Servitor. Am I a black player now? Thank you, Joseph, for turning me on to Shire. It's 3 to black for
I'd be with this card. Yeah, this thing is nutty.
Yeah, it's really cool. Artifact creature construct with indestructible. It's a 1/1. When Barbed Servitor enters the battlefield.
When the Servitor enters to be defeated.
Oh shoot. When the Servitor enters the battlefield, suspect it. So it gains menace, can't block anymore. Whenever Barbed Servitor deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card and you lose a life. Very classic black stuff, but that's great. It's an indestructible creature that you're going to be swinging in with menace that will just be drawing you a card half the time, probably. Whenever Barbed Servitor is dealt damage to let me start that over. Whenever Barbed Servitor is dealt damage, target opponent loses that much life. So it's indestructible. You're swinging in. They want to block it because you get to draw a card if they don't. They do have to block it with at least 2 creatures because it will have menace on it. And so that's a bunch of damage that's hitting it every time that you just get to swing back at something else. This card is freaking crazy.
Yeah, it's one of those like black choice type of cards, right? Like we said about how a card with suspect is eventually going to start piling on that extra damage. This thing naturally comes with indestructible. What are they going to do when you start strapping it with auras and equipments and things like that? It's going to be swinging in with menace and indestructible.
Yeah.
So what are they going to allow you to do? Are they going to eventually just keep taking that combat damage and you're fueling up on cards as well?
Dude, Yeah.
Certainly not at some point. They're going to start throwing, maybe at minimum, they're going to start throwing 2 like 1/1 tokens underneath it as well. Okay, so great. You haven't drawn a card out of it, but you have now killed probably 2 of their creatures, and you flung 2 damage back at them. So it still is going to kill them.
Yeah. This card is bonkers.
Yeah, and like the other types of cards like Stuffy Doll and Brash Taunter, this kind of card doesn't care how the damage came to it. So if you are, again, playing it in this hypothetical Judith Spellslinger deck and you get down the Blasphemous Act will still trigger it because it doesn't care where the damage came from, just as long as it got hit with something. Bleep.
Dang. Thank you for pointing that out to me. I think I'm going to build Judith for real.
I would. It's
this
so
card's
cool.
going in there, dude. Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
Come on, just a souped up young pyromancer from the command zone that then burns and drains.
Dude, you just shoot this with all of your like shock spells and just deal damage to everyone else.
Oh yeah, let's play Judith Stuffy Doll. You get this guy, you get Brash Taunter, you get Stuffy Doll, and all of that stuff. We could put Wrathful Red Dragon in here as well. Same thing.
Ooh, dude. We're cooking. We are cooking.
Cooking with gas. Oh, man. So suffice to say, this is a very interesting and cool set. There is some very interesting and wacky new styles of card designs between the ones that are able to do some face-down morph shenanigans, exiling and getting extra benefits with collect evidence from your graveyard, a bunch of wacky new legendary creatures and new investigate as well, cases as the enchantments, and just some of the strangest and outland their new legendary creature designs on some of your favorite Ravnica friends. I think this is going to be quite an incredible commander set.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about the commander precons they're making for this set.
Right.
Those are shaping up to be pretty exciting.
That'll be next time?
Next time.
Maybe that's where we'll find Joseph.
Is he in one of the precons?
He very well might be. Do you want to help us find Joseph for the next episode of the MTG Thoughtcast? Please make sure you are liked and subscribed to us here on the channel for our next episode, wherein we probably find him in the precons or not.
That's so sick.
But
that's so
Jared,
funny.
any last thoughts on the set before we close out?
Dude, I think it's really cool. Even though I was like a little hard on the mechanic, I feel like they were a little bit lazy with their mechanic reskinning. But overall, I think the set looks really freaking cool. I love a strong story in general, and especially one that's like more interesting than catastrophic. And I think this is sick. This is shaping up really good. So,
it's
how about
very
you, John?
fun.
Any last parting words?
Same thing. Like I said, this has definitely had this sort of impression on me. Like I said, very similar to Ixalan, that I wasn't very excited about Ravnica as a place, but this whole murder mystery setting is super fun and interesting. Like very, very tropes of mysteries and investigations, and I don't know, maybe some of the pun names for things they've done on names and flavor text might have just been like a little too much, maybe a little too goofy for the game, but some of it is very, very fun. I think this is going to be a very fun set for people. It's going to have very fun build around potential. There's this whole thing floating around now of the sort of like hidden clues game, as like we're looking at the cards and like the website lore and things of that nature to like uncover this big mystery. So people are playing along with that. That's super fun. We haven't even also discussed as well the additive that's coming along with this set as well, the Clue Edition box, which looks like it's going to be lots of fun. That's going to be the thing to buy, that if you really want to play the like in depth of the guild factions on what those they can do, that's what you're going to want to buy to be able to play that if you're not as heavy into the investigation and mystery solving themes. Clue Edition has essentially jumpstart packs that the packets do very guild color things, right? So Golgari Graveyard, Azurius Control, Boros Battalion, things like that.
Heck yeah.
That'd be a great additive. But I think that's going to go ahead and do it for us for this set.
I think we've collected all the evidence we need.
We
we're gonna
have
go
collected
find
the
Joseph.
evidence. Yeah, until we find him, we'll present our evidence to the Grandmaster later.
All right.
But-
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on the video. Tell us what you want us to talk about next. And we will see you guys next time on the MTG Thoughtcast.
Have a good night, everybody.
Deuces.